In The Dark Knight, one of DC's best films and a personal favorite of mine, Harvey Dent adds to the list of iconic lines in cinema history with this famous quote.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
And since the film came out, I have seen so many applications of this quote, from hilarious to quite compelling, with my favorite being Lelouch versus Light. And when you think about it, this one line summarizes the journey of these two characters, so I figured it would be worth spending some time going over it. I don't think I'm taking any risks by stating that in this situation, Light lived long enough to become the villain, where Lelouch died a hero. But it's important to establish this before actually starting my analysis. Lelouch died a hero at the end of the Zero Requiem at the hands of Suzaku Kurorugi. This ended his reign of tyranny, bringing peace to the world and giving everyone a future. Little does everyone know that this was actually planned from the start. Lelouch took on the mask as the evil emperor and focused all the world's hatred on him, so by dying the world could move forward, something his family adamantly fought against. Lelouch starts and ends the series with the classic line,
"The only ones who should kill are those who are prepared to be killed."
The only ones who should kill are those prepared to be killed.
It's important because Lelouch knew at some point he was going to have to die, and he never avoided it. Instead, he incorporated it into his grand plan as arguably the most vital element, an heroic death to a fantastic character. Unfortunately, I have to shift the discussion to Light's end, which was anything but heroic. Depending on how you interpret Death Note, Light was either a villain from day one, or he was an anti-hero with good intentions that became corrupt, losing his way, becoming the very thing he fought against, an evil criminal. Regardless, Light by the end of Death Note was an irredeemable villain. His actions in the first part of Death Note was borderline evil, but what Light does during the second half of Death Note can only be described as the devil's work. If there was any good in Light, it was long gone at this point. You can see this from how he handles the important people in his life, his father, Taka, and Misa. With L out of the way, we were able to experience the world that Light always wanted to create. People living in fear with no conflicts to speak of. Security and peace are pointless if people don't have a choice in the matter. Not to mention that simply being a criminal was never the end game. Eventually, even normal people would become the victims of Light's sick vision for a perfect world. Light stopped being redeemable as the goalposts constantly moved. Nier was correct at the end of Death Note.
You're just a murderer, Light Yagami. You yielded to the power of the Shinigami in the notebook, and you have confused yourself with a god. In the end, you're nothing more than a crazy serial killer. That's all you are.
I want to continue this comparison with a focus on the two episodes in which both characters' true identities were revealed to the main cast. I will be comparing Code Geass R2-19 to Death Note episode 37. I'm aware that even though the scenes are very similar given what happens in each one, there is a significant difference which I should point out. Lelouch before the reveal believed that Nully was dead, hence his dream will never come true, which is one of the main reasons why he had no issues with dying in that scene. Light, on the other hand, walked into the warehouse with confidence knowing he would be the only one to walk out. Even though Lelouch failed to achieve his goals before the betrayal, both characters during these scenes had to at some point deal with the harsh reality that what they were striving to accomplish was never going to happen. Let's look at how both characters handle defeat. Lelouch took full accountability for his actions, even doubling down on the claims. Lelouch does this so Colin would leave him to his fate. He heard that the Black Knights would shoot Colin if she stayed with him, and Lelouch didn't want Colin to sacrifice her life. And the only way to prevent that is to double down on the claims to convince Colin to leave him. Colin also realized this when writing her letter at the end of R2. We saw an earlier example of Lelouch expressing this similar desire early on in R2 during Shirley's rescue. Despite all the awful things Lelouch had done up to this point, even his most hated detractors can't deny that Lelouch handled this situation heroically, standing firm and facing the consequences for his actions while ensuring that no one else would die for his sake. Time to see what the opposite of heroic looks like. Light Yagami's response to being exposed as Kira had all the typical traits you see in a villain: cowardice, fear, rage, etc. Instead of accepting the reality that it was over, Light attempted to talk his way out of it. Stalling the police to use the paper in his watch, he tried to wax philosophically justifying his actions. His first instinct was to assume that Mikami betrayed him instead of acknowledging that it was his own failure. And in desperation, after Matsuda shoots Light, he says Takamisa's name out loud, knowing full well that he treated them both like garbage and neither is coming to help him out. His behavior proved that L was right all along. Light was nothing more than a child, and this was all a game to him. A game where he was willing to accept all the spoils of victory, but none of the consequences for defeat. To make matters worse, Light runs away, and what could only be described as one of the most pathetic things you will ever see. A sad end to someone with great potential and aspirations for the future. The reason why Light and Lelouch have different responses to a very similar situation relates to what each character says in the first episode. We went over Lelouch, so I will jump to a Light set.
And I will become the god of this new world.
The major difference is that Lelouch was prepared to die to accomplish his goals, almost knowing it was inevitable. This is the only end for someone that walks the path of blood. And according to Light's statement, he wanted to become a god. And as we know, gods are immortal, perfect beings. They don't lose and everyone serves them. With that mindset, it's no wonder Light couldn't handle defeat and acted like a coward when he lost. You can take this point further by looking at the 2 episodes from a more macro perspective. Regardless if the creators intended it or not, doing this reveals an important distinction between the characters. Lelouch can recover from defeat and move on, which is what happened at the end of that episode. Light, on the other hand, didn't have it in him to recover from the same type of defeat, and that's why Geass continues after that episode, but Death Note ends, which I don't think was an accident. Thinking back on it, Light never had to struggle in his brief but significant existence. He had a loving family, was a prodigy, and was desired by many women. I could go on, but you get the point. It's probably one of the reasons why he was so bored in life. I always got the impression that while he wanted to change the world, the challenge itself was the real motivation behind his actions. It's why Light was the most excited when battling L and the most bored after his death. To be fair, Lelouch also lived a privileged life. However, unlike Light, it was taken from him at a young age. Since his exile to Japan, Lelouch's life has been nothing but a struggle. Put it simply, Lelouch fought his whole life for the boring life that Light had. Most of Lelouch's thoughts throughout Geass are on the peaceful past that he hopes to reclaim someday, with the main focus being on Nunnally's safety. What I find interesting is that Light's goal reminded me of Schneisel's, only replaced the Death Note for the Flare warheads. Lelouch told Schneisel that people deserve a future, believing that even though it's unknown whether people will make it a good one, it is still their right to decide. Lelouch preferred the boring world over Light's and Schneisel's stagnant existence, which can't really be called living. Unfortunately, Lelouch never got to experience that boring world, the same one that Light took for granted. And unlike Light, who doesn't face many challenges even as Kira, Lelouch suffers many setbacks along the way. As Lelouch said in Lelouch of the Resurrection,
My past is the crucible in which I was forged. My scars are a testament.
Because Lelouch overcomes so many setbacks, it makes sense he could recover even after losing everything. Light wasn't battle-tested, which left him no chance to ever recover from his first and only major defeat in the entire series. I know that Light had good intentions initially with killing criminals, but I always found his motivations to be rooted in selfishness, creating a world that would be perfect only for him, not considering the lives of others. And how can you when you kill from the shadows instead of fighting in the front lines with the same people you are supposedly trying to save? In the beginning of this video, I quoted Harvey Dent's famous line from The Dark Knight, but there's another famous line from the Joker, which I think also applies to the characters, and it's an excellent way to summarize this discussion.
You see, in their last moments, people show you who they really are. So, in a way, I knew your friends better than you ever did. Would you like to know which of them were cowards?
And with that, we have come to the end. If you guys liked this video, please like, comment, and share the video. And if you want more content, please subscribe. Let me know in the comments which character you enjoyed more and why. I hope you enjoyed the video. And remember, the world is not a dark place, and tomorrow will be a good day. Thanks for watching.